And it's recorded. So if you stand over here, you will be in the recording. But yeah, thanks for coming. Hey. Oh. Oh yeah, I'm gonna stand in the back. I'll probably be like 5 minutes.
We will go probably a minute over. We'll compare you. Yeah, I know.
My script questions.
I'm gonna start off.
I just wrote it down.
Yeah.
I know it's not, so that's true. Yes. Oh, yeah, that's just. You're gonna solve for it. I was gonna do.
Full come.
Yeah, no, it's okay, yeah.
But do you want me to?
So good.
I can just.
Wait.
Okay. Go to the students.
There.
Yeah, okay. All ready to get going? Okay, hi everyone. I'm Maureen McMahon. I work in the Office of Sustainability here in Facility Services. I'm on the campus planning and sustainability team. Down here. Okay. So today we're here to talk about Environmental Frontiers Campus Student Research Assistant Experience. And I'm just going to give you first, before we hear from the students about their project groups and their research findings, a little overview of what we're doing in the Office of Sustainability. So here I am, a communications and engagement specialist. On my team, our mighty team of 2 people is Sarah Copenhagen. I'm sorry she couldn't be here today. She's the campus sustainability manager. And then we work in tandem with the energy team. Brian Bozell, Senior Director of Energy Programs, Hannah Kadanu, Campus Energy Manager, and Kevin Keating just joined our team. He's the Energy and Utilities Manager. And so together we have been helping to mentor the EFCampus. Just to get started, this is a historical look back from 98 years ago, a snapshot of UChicago sustainability. This is a letter from Max Mason. He was the president at the time. And it says, to the members of the faculties, our expense for maintenance of buildings is so great that members of our faculties are asked to reduce waste to the smallest possible amount. This refers to heat, light, and any use of equipment in the service of the university. You are asked to cooperate at all times in this matter. Specific ways are to turn off all lights on leaving your offices, classrooms, and laboratories, and to report badly adjusted thermostats. And so the messaging continues almost 100 years later. But now we're a little more sophisticated in our understanding of how we can improve sustainability on campus. And we have a timeline here just to go over a couple of highlights. In 2008, they first started staffing sustainability staff members in facility services. They broadened their impact by working with staff throughout the administration to advance sustainability within their own areas. And we still do that. A lot of Sarah and my work is meeting with stakeholders in different units and talking about their sustainability questions and concerns and challenges and coming up with solutions and ideas. Over time, the university has continued to adapt operations, and we've become increasingly rigorous, ambitious, and transparent. So in 2013, we established a minimum of LEED Silver certification in environmental design for major capital projects over $5 million in anticipation of growing significantly. And in 2016, we created our first sustainability plan baseline report and started quantifying the university's greenhouse gas emissions. We used international protocols for that, and we began providing annual reporting. Moving up to 2020, they University announced, this was President Zimmer, a new goal to reduce emissions 50% by 2030. And in April 22, we released a new greenhouse gas emission reduction plan in alignment with the more ambitious goal. It had been 20% by 2025. And so this is far bigger and more ambitious goal. And then in 2023, we had very exciting news that the President Alivi Santos is going to establish a Climate and Energy Institute, and the Office of Sustainability put out a brand new website. So that was a big undertaking, and I encourage you all to go. It's sustainability.uchicago.edu, where we now have, I mean, we had this before, but there's complete reporting tab, live dashboards, and news, and you get involved. So on a regular basis, we track progress in the sustainability plan's 9 main areas. And I'm just going to focus here on the first area, climate change and energy. So we primarily focus here because of the urgency of climate change and on adding high performance buildings to our portfolio as we grow. Because heating, cooling, and powering our buildings is the source of the most greenhouse gas emissions for the university at 70%. The fact that we've increased square footage of campus 17% while slightly decreasing campus emissions is a good achievement. So that's since the first baseline. I'd like to highlight that we've gotten several awards. The Keller Center, where Harris School is, that's our only AIA award that the university's ever received. Energy Star Partner of the Year, we're only the second university to get recognized with an Energy Star Partnership of the Year award, Sustained Excellence for Energy Management. We have some Green Restaurant Association certifications, those just got renewed, and People's Gas Energy Efficiency Partner of the Year. I would say with multimodal transportation, in the last year, we have 4 new Divvy bike stations as we increase sustainable options for transportation on campus. This is from December with the 2023 update of the greenhouse gas emissions update. So UChicago's total annual emissions, we measure just under 180,000 megatons. That's equivalent to about that generated by 23,500 homes energy use for 1 year. The green line at the top shows the growth of the university footprint as we've increased with new buildings. And these are the 3 scopes. Scope 1 in blue is direct emissions like natural gas and the university's own fleet. Scope 2 in gold, indirect emissions like electricity or purchased utilities. And scope 3, well, 1 and 2 together is 70% of our emissions. And scope 3 does not count towards our emissions total, but we still track it. Many indirect sources, business air travel, waste. We have verifiable data for those sources, but air travel is the 3rd largest contributor to emissions, about 20% of emissions that we measure. That includes study abroad travel, and faculty and staff travel, and people taking flights to campus at the beginning of the quarters. We think about student travel. So in the greenhouse gas protocol, scope 3 is optional reporting because methodology is not settled. This is a snapshot of some of the features of our new website. The EFCampus students helped us collect data and create visualizations. Sarah Copenhagen, one of her great achievements in her role as the sustainability manager, was creating a project called Project Cowbell, which is a collected system of record for all of utility usage data on the university and other sustainability data. She used to do calculations by hand, and now she has it automated, and you can go on the website and look at our dashboards that have been designed with Tableau. So this is a great improvement for transparency and it helps create interesting research questions and share data publicly. The greenhouse gas emissions reduction plan passed to reduce absolute greenhouse gas emissions 50% by 2030. This slide illustrates the paths or strategies for getting to that goal. The first one, we'll need to reduce the carbon emissions of existing buildings by implementing energy conservation measures such as LED lighting and laboratory and HVAC control retrofits. About half our goal will be achieved by this strategy, and we can do this through energy conservation measures. And as of last year, there have been over 150 ECMs completed towards the goal. Substitute. So this means we're going to replace high carbon intensity fuels with low carbon emission fuels. Examples include the use of renewable energy for electricity generation, fleet electrification, and some electrification of campus heating. About half our goal will be achieved through substitution. And then over here, offsets. Any emission reductions that cannot be achieved by the top 3 strategies may be met through offsets. Currently, offsets aren't part of the 50% plan, but they could be used to achieve more aggressive goals. And we're currently working through the next steps on what and when projects should be implemented in the plan. And then there's this nice quote from the president. Climate change is one of the greatest challenges of our times, and the University of Chicago is committed to making a positive impact on this complex problem. Taking actions to cut the university's greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030 is one of the ways we are applying the expertise of our community to build a more sustainable future. Oh, I'm like, why didn't I see those before? Now you can think about it. As far as fleet electrification goes, I'm happy that you might have seen an article. We have a few Ford E-Transits rolling around now, which are large carpentry vehicles. And there's a goal to, they're like large white vans. There's a goal to make all of facility services fleet hybrid or hybrid electric in the next 6 years. If you go to the website under Get Involved, there's a couple ways, especially students can get involved. And I'm going to talk briefly about Environmental Frontiers. So the Environmental Frontiers Initiative has this exciting research and educational collaboration between students, faculty, and staff that we call EFCampus. Undergraduate students teams use data to tackle research problems on UChicago's energy use and other aspects of environmental sustainability with the goal of producing actionable recommendations. Today, we'll hear about current research projects to reduce excess energy use in lab buildings and piloting an air travel emissions reduction campaign. The students, they join us as paid research assistants, and they meet with stakeholders, administration members, and receive mentorship around strategy, data analysis, and communications. So it's a really fantastic and unique opportunity to think about campus as a laboratory, to ask interesting and challenging questions, and to come up with actionable recommendations. I just want to say this year we're grateful for the support of the College Curricular Innovation Fund. And we also have the backing of Mansueto Institute, the Committee on Environment, Geography, Urbanization, the Division of the Social Sciences, the Center for the Robust Decision-Making on Climate and Energy Policy, the Office of the Provost, Facility Services, and Office of Sustainability. I'd like to recognize the leadership of our faculty co-leaders, Associate Professor in the Department of the Geophysical Sciences, Elizabeth Moyer. Thank you. She's here today. And our Senior Instructional Professor and Director of SIGU, Sabina Sheck. She is on leave this quarter. So maybe she's online. Hello. Thank you to Emily Padston, who's here. She directed EFCampus. And she's our staff director and executive director, Brian Wilson of Mansueto Institute. Thank you so much. And thank you, Amy, for your event support, and Heidi. We've got so many people that make this a really amazing experience for students. I would say we do about 20 to 25 students come through this every year. since it started, this is the third year. If you have other questions about Get Involved, you can ask me. And this is my contact information. This is Kathleen Galome on my campus planning team. She's the environment manager and plant expert. She's giving a landscape tour to our students. So they get involved in a lot of sort of field trips, outings, and experiential learning with the administration and staff. So that's it. I think if you have any questions, we have a few minutes, or if Liz wanted to say something.
No, just I encourage students to get involved. I mean, it's an amazing chance to, you know, be a paid consultant for the university. Like, a lot of people feel like the university should be doing better at certain things, and this is your chance to help them do better. So we've had students go on to great jobs. A lot of people have gone off to work for city government, for companies as kind of sustainability managers, to work for think tanks. You know, some of them have gone off to grad school, but you know, the experience you get at Environmental Frontiers is really, you know, the kind of diverse portfolio you need to move on in life and effectively make change. And that's what we're hoping to help you do here too. Thanks.
Sure. All right, so now I'm introducing Louise Wang. She's been our graduate student lead, supervising the research of the undergraduate student teams. And she is a candidate in the Booth School and the Harris School. Thanks.
Thank you, Maureen. I really appreciate that overview. I'm just gonna quickly, hi, I'm Louise, just introduce our student research assistants. There's 4 of them here, and then 2 of them will also be shouted out, and I think one is maybe online, they're studying abroad right now, but they've done a lot of work since last summer until now, and I'm excited to have them share that with you. So I'm gonna let the first team come up. This is the air travel sustainability team.
All right, hi everyone. Thank you for being here. We're the air travel sustainability team, and we worked with the U Chicago Professional School for the last around a year to inform a campaign on air travel sustainability. So just as a presentation outline, we're going to be going over some introductions, generally overviewing air travel at the university, talking about our project timeline, a little bit of data analysis, and our final recommendations. So first off, I'm Kriti Arun-Kundram. I am from San Jose, California. I'm a 3rd year majoring in computer science and environmental science.
And hi, everybody. Thanks again for being here today. I'm Julie. I'm a 2nd year from Indiana studying environmental science. And then this is Will. He worked with us in the summer and the fall. He's graduating this year in economics and environmental studies, and he's contributed a lot to the project, so we just wanted to shout him out here. Getting started, to give you guys a bit of context about our project. So as Maureen mentioned, air travel is the 3rd largest source of greenhouse gas emissions at the university, but it's also scope 3. So for those who aren't familiar, organizations usually classify their emissions by scopes. So scope 1 is direct emissions, scope 2 indirect emissions, and scope 3 is classified as indirect or uncontrollable emissions. So that includes food waste, that can mean like supply chain emissions, and it also means air travel. And what that means is when we started our project and we were looking at what other schools are doing, we found that a lot of schools aren't tracking their air travel emissions. And that's because scope 3 is typically not required for greenhouse gas emissions reporting, and it's also typically not included in an organization's sustainability commitments. That said, it's a huge part of an organization's carbon footprint. For example, as Maureen mentioned, air travel emissions accounted for 20% of overall greenhouse gas emissions at the university in fiscal year 2019. It's also a huge part of an individual's carbon footprint. Just to give you guys a sense, flying from Chicago to San Francisco round trip is like roughly gonna emit the same amount as you driving from the west and east coast of the United States. So our project had a unique challenge, which was how are we gonna control emissions that are kind of considered to be uncontrollable. And the way we went about that is we looked at what schools are doing, we looked at what airlines are doing, and we worked closely with a professional school at the university to analyze their fiscal year 2023 travel data from JP Morgan. and suggest messaging and awareness strategies around sustainable travel for their staff.
All right, so next up, I'm gonna go over a little bit of the project timeline that we've had. We've been working on this since the beginning of last summer. And so we started off by looking at some of our peer institutions, namely MIT and Harvard. And at Harvard, we looked at a Fly Less, Fly Better campaign that was mostly a behavioral campaign. And for MIT, we looked at something called a Travel Sustainability Fund, in which they basically take a tax out of every flight that they have and put it into a fund to invest in carbon offsets. So we were really interested in carbon offsets, but we found a lot of flaws in them. So something that we looked at over the summer was sustainable aviation fuels, which is like a newer industry. But since it was a newer industry, it became something that the university couldn't necessarily invest in. And so we sort of went in a different direction. We also preliminarily looked at the data from the fiscal year 2023. And something that we mainly mentioned was the top destinations with San Francisco and LaGuardia being the top destinations. And we looked at the difference between faculty and staff travel, with a significant portion of them being international. And in that international travel, we saw that around 20% of it was from booth centers, and the other 80% was from other international destinations. And we found a relatively even breakdown between staff and faculty.
In fall, we got a lot done. We expanded our network of stakeholders to include people in communications at the Office of Sustainability, as well as in procurement. And that enabled us to do two very big things. The first is we enabled filtering by emissions on Concur. Concur is the university's travel booking platform. So as of now, all university employees, when they're searching for flights or booking flights on Concur, are going to be able to see their flights emissions and filter by emissions. The second thing we did is we published a sustainable travel guide on the Office of Sustainability's website, which just serves as a resource for people who are trying to learn about what they can do. For example, like flying economy, flying direct, or prioritizing other modes of travel. In winter, we shifted towards looking at creating a behavioral campaign. And to inform the behavioral campaign, we basically performed two big analyses. The first is we hosted an air travel sustainability focus group with our professional school stakeholders, which basically included the top travelers from a myriad of departments. For example, IT, human resources, accounting, programming. And then the second thing we did is we reanalyzed the data from the summer, but with new parameters, which Kriti is going to talk about.
So something that we did new during winter and this spring quarter is we looked at the data that we got through a different lens. And so that was that we narrowed it down to staff because we thought it was more actionable to be able to look at specific departments and sort of look at air travel that was more controllable. So this would be just the staff section of the data set that we had, and we broke it down into different departments. And we sort of found that, again, still significant international travel, and the top three departments would be Office of Advancement, Admissions, and Career Services. And so we looked sort of at how they were traveling month by month. And so this is Office of Advancement. We have Career Services and Admissions. And something that we learned from this was that the times of travel were very different by department, like throughout the year. So we found that sort of a one-size-fits-all model for like a behavioral campaign to target when to reduce air travel wasn't necessarily a model that would work. We also sort of noticed that there's a lot of like infrequency in the data, and that was something that that is leading to our final recommendations during this time.
And as I mentioned, we hosted our focus group, and the focus group was really about understanding like why people travel and what goes into their travel behaviors. So some of the key takeaways that we got from the focus group was learning about why travel is essential to the professional school's operations. And the primary reason cited for traveling was to grow relationships and facilitate in-person connection. The second thing we learned was that travel looks different across different departments, and that aligned with what Kriti found in our data analysis. And then the third thing that we found that was actually very interesting was that staff was already practicing a lot of sustainable behaviors. For example, we heard a lot about people bundling trips, prioritizing meetings, booking in advance, price checking flights. All of these were the same behaviors that we were trying to promote. But interestingly, we found that these behaviors weren't necessarily motivated by environmental concerns. It was mostly for budget, because of budget restrictions. And so there was kind of a little bit of a gap between the awareness about how these behaviors are not just economical, but also sustainable. And that leads us into our final recommendations. The first one is regarding promoting a culture of sustainability that endures changing financial situations. So in the future, when a department has more resources, we don't necessarily want that to mean that people change their travel behaviors. And so what we are creating as our final deliverable is onboarding materials with best practices from our focus group for future staff. And some of the things that we'll highlight is we're going to emphasize how avoiding emissions can also save money for departments. We include resources like a decision-making tree, as well as a guide to comparing emissions when you're booking or searching for travel on Concur or Google.
The other part of our final deliverables are around data recommendations. A large trend during this entire project has been sort of the challenges that we've had with the data set that we were given. It is mostly fiscal data, and so that means that there's a lot of missing pieces in the set that we were given, including missing sub-trip information. Like, for example, round trips aren't necessarily accounted for correctly, or inconsistency in the name formatting, or the ability to distinguish between trip actual bookings or add-ons. So these are things that we had problems with the data set. And we kind of wanted to emphasize how important we think the data is for a campaign like this. So we wanted to include some sort of helpful fields like miles per trip, or if it's an international or domestic trip, or the breakdowns between faculty, staff, and department. And that leads to Julie's point.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways that we got from a year's worth of work is just what Cree's talking about, what good data would enable us to do for this project. For example, we'd be able to track progress on our sustainability goals and the impact of behavioral campaigns, specifically targeted behavioral campaigns, such as the one that we are doing with staff. Additionally, we'd be able to continue raising awareness about air travel carbon footprints amongst departments. At the beginning, we mentioned it's the third largest source of emissions at the university, but it could be an entirely different kind of conversation if we were able to tell people, this is how much your department emits, this is how much that contributes to the university's carbon footprint, this is how you compare to other departments that are also doing the same thing as you. And then finally, it would create a foundation for future large-scale programs, or making the case for future large-scale programs. As we found over the summer when we were looking at some of the top universities who are leading in air travel sustainability, they have things like a carbon tax or sustainability fund, which if we had reliable data and accessible data, we would be able to apply something like the social cost of carbon and start to model what those large-scale programs could look like at UChicago. And so just what we wanted to leave you guys with is about how the future of, or the success of behavioral campaigns, as well as deriving meaningful insights to fuel new behavioral campaigns, is really going to rely on having comprehensive and reliable data surrounding air travel at the university. But that's pretty much our presentation. Thank you guys so much for listening and coming out today. Kriti and I have enjoyed working on the project in the past year, and so if you guys have any questions, we're happy to answer them, but thank you.
I think that means that nobody else has questions.
We have
Fine.
3 minutes if anybody wants to ask anything.
Otherwise, we would to introduce our peer group, the labs team, to
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. We're really excited to present our work on the lab energy usage project. just some quick introductions. My name is Raghav. I'm a third year student from New Delhi, India, and I've been working as an EFCampus research assistant since summer, so it's almost been a year.
Yeah, I'm Vincent. I'm a second year. I'm majoring in economics and data science. And did you want to introduce?
Yeah, our third member is studying abroad in Paris, Ellen, and she's been mainly working on the freezer challenge. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to Mehak and Dati, who worked with me over the summer on different projects in the lab project. So this is our agenda for today. We wanted to give a quick overview of the lab energy usage project, talk about our past work and present work, and conclude our presentation then. So just for some context, the University of Chicago lab buildings contribute nearly 40% or consume 40% of energy, even though they occupy just 10% of building space. And so the lab energy project is really important in reducing scope 1 and scope 2 greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by fiscal year 2030 as compared to the target base years. So briefly talking about the three sub-projects in the lab project. So first we have the Shut the Sash campaign. So for those that aren't familiar, Shut the Sash campaign is about closing fume hoods. Fume hoods, a chemical fume hood basically uses as much energy as 3.5 homes every day. So clearly this has been a clear priority for us since the summer. And so the Shut the Sash competition is a competition among different principal investigators to make sure that they're closing their fume hoods after using them and saving energy. Next, we have the lab decision-making tool, which is a tool that was designed to help make principal investigators or PIs cost-effective and energy-efficient purchases when they're buying a new fume hood or a freezer or even retrofitting their current lab. And lastly, we have the freezer challenge, which is an initiative to encourage principal investigators and lab users to really maintain and clean their freezers and again reduce energy. And freezers, ultra low temperature freezers are the second most energy intensive equipment in labs. So as I mentioned before, fume hoods, when you think of fume hoods, think about 3.5 homes worth of energy used per day. For ultra low temperature freezers, that number is around like one home. One energy use is equal to like one home per day. So we wanted to contextualize our past work by first talking about what work we've done in the past, including summer as well as fall and winter. So in the summer, we worked on all the three projects that I talked about before, but most notably after visiting the Eckhart Research Center and looking at past data trends of fume hood openness percentages, we found that we need to revamp the Shut the Sash competition. We decided to switch from a quarterly model to a semi-annual competition to make sure that we are measuring tangible results over a period of time. Moreover, we also decided to remove the most consistent category in order to not reward fume hoods that were consistently being open and consistently using a lot of energy. In addition, in the summer, we also looked at the lab decision-making tool, updating the tool, making sure that we have updated list for different energy efficient equipment, and we also provided a fume hood database. And we researched on how we can restart the freezer challenge in the fall and winter.
Okay, so I can talk a little bit more about freezers. So in case you guys haven't been in a lab, here are like some freezers. The one on the right is an actual ultra low temperature freezer. One of the other ones on the left, they're like multiple in the lab, usually in like a big lab, but like they're like not at negative 70 degrees Celsius, but also like require like a lot of energy to maintain. And if you can see on the right, like there's a lot of ice buildup. Ideally, right, you want to brush this ice like every couple of weeks, so then like it does not build up, and you can't like. I remember when we went to the lab, like it was really hard to pull even the samples out because of the ice buildup. So obviously, when there's like a lot of ice buildup, like it just requires a lot more energy to maintain the same temperature, and the same goes for the other freezers, which is because it's lower temperature, there's less ice buildup. And another thing that we don't have pictures of the oils or the filters, but they also require brushing. And on the sides, when you can see like on the sides of the door, like those also require to be cleaned. So then like heat doesn't get in and the cold air doesn't get out. And like so from like this experience about this was in the fall, by the way, because I haven't mentioned that, but from this experience, we were able to figure out like, oh, like what practices are most feasible, because we understand like a lab's purpose is to do research. It's not to like maintain their freezers, but we want to like encourage that kind of behavior. And it honestly doesn't require too much work. It just requires some time set aside. So we were looking at most efficient ways to do this, because we don't want to like overcomplicate things and ask them to do a lot of maintenance, and just want to pick the most like impactful freezer like practices. And one of them is definitely like having a full defrost. Full defrost is quite annoying, I'd say, like for lab managers, because you have to take everything out of sample and put it in a different one and then defrost it overnight or perhaps for two nights, and then you put back the samples in. Another one would be that like you want to set the temperature of the freezer to -70 degrees instead of -80, because -80 was really popular back in the day, because like freezers were just not as efficient as they are now. And now like we know that like most samples for a specific lab would work if it was at -7 degrees. So like telling somebody to change like what they've known, especially like since they have been in the research field for so long, like will be difficult, but that's like the point of our challenge, to encourage these behaviors and hopefully keep them that way. And we have a promotion video for that.
Yeah, so in addition to running the competition, we did want to sort of inform PIs and lab users about important practices for the Shut the Sash campaign. And maybe I can play 30 seconds of this video, but there's also a QR code if you're interested in watching the full video. You just play it. So yeah, that was our video which we were hoping gets published on the Office of Sustainability website as well. And in fall and winter, I think we focused on refining the Shut the Sash competition. In addition to the changes that I talked about before, we improved the competition by introducing two really important changes. First is we started looking at the PI performance instead of the individual fumer performance. And what this means is that, for example, for one of the awards that we have called Best Overall Performance, initially we looked at the individual fume hood and the average sash height for that fume hood, and we would give the award to the PI depending on like how that individual fume hood performed. However, now we transitioned to a method where we are looking at all fume hoods for a given PI, and we do that by averaging the sash height for that fume hood, or averaging the openness percentages for all fume hoods for a given PI. This makes sure that we're not just awarding a PI for taking care of one fume hood while the other fume hoods are still left open and still using a lot of energy. So that was the first change, was to like implement a more PI-centric approach, more holistic approach. Secondly, when we were looking at the data, we found that in GCIS, which is the Gordon Center for Integrative Sciences, a lot of fume hoods were consistently closed, but still being included in the competition. So if they're consistently closed, that means that, and they're included in the competition, this would bring down the average openness percentages for fume hoods for different PIs. And that would mean that we are giving awards to PIs for fume hoods that aren't being used. And so we wanted to change that, and we did that by taking the standard deviation of the openness percentages of fume hoods for each month of the competition. And we not only excluded those fume hoods that have a lower standard deviation, but we also had to take into account that those fume hoods that have a low standard deviation also have a low openness percentage, because we ran into the problem of some fume hoods having a really low standard deviation but still having really high openness percentages. And what that means is that there are fume hoods that are consistently left open. So standard deviation might be low, but they still might be open and using a lot of energy. So we had to be mindful about including those fume hoods, but excluding those that are consistently shut and not in use by different PIs. And so this was the work that we have done in the past. It was just about refining the competition to make sure that we are rewarding actual change, actual energy savings. And so in the spring, it was all about implementation. In the spring, we cleaned huge chunks of data and implemented the changes that we talked about before. But I want you guys to take into account two facts. So we looked at GCIS, the Gordon Center for Integrative Sciences, and the Eckhart Research Center. And fact number one is that GCIS has a significantly higher number of fume hoods than ERC, maybe even thrice the amount. And secondly, there are a lot of PIs in both these buildings that only have one fume hood. The reason why I'm sharing these facts is because earlier what we would do with GCIS and ERC is that we would award the top 3 PIs or fume hoods in each category. But it just didn't seem fair because they do have different number of fume hoods, and we do want to accommodate for that fact. So in order to solve these two problems, first, what we did was that we set an improvement percentage threshold. So as I talked about before, so one of the awards that we have is the best overall performance to reward those PIs that keep their sash consistently closed or they shut it after use. But another category that we have is most improved, wherein we look at the performance of the fume hoods, look at the performance of fume hoods for a particular PI before the competition and then after the competition to see how much they've improved. And what we did when we were calculating winners was that we set a improvement percentage threshold. So again, instead of looking at the top 3 PIs in the most improved category, we set the improvement percentage threshold as 25%. So that would deal with the problem of awarding the same number of fume hoods or same number of PIs for buildings having different number of fume hoods and different number of PIs. And secondly, we also made sure that for PIs that only had one lab, for PIs that only had one fume hood, we would only award them once and not twice because we don't want to over-reward them or give them 2 awards for just maintaining one fume hood. And we also made sure that PIs with multiple fume hoods are included in one of the awards as well. And we are really excited to announce that after a lot of data cleaning, a lot of meetings, we were able to calculate winners for GCIS and ERC for the first leg of the semi-annual competition. And these are the winners. We are hoping to inform them soon, give them donuts and a certificate, and continue the competition and refine it for the next leg as well.
I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the freezer challenge. So since we've it's already established that freezers is a huge point of energy efficacy that could be improved, and that we've also established what best practices are there to use and are worth the PI's time. So now it's more during the spring we're more in the area of okay, now that we've done all this research, what do we do now? So we've thought about the probably most important thing would be piloting. So we understand because obviously we don't we're not the PI, we don't understand too well how they run a lab. So we want to pilot and understand what works for them and what doesn't. And so we're going to be this kind of touches in what's going to happen in the summer. But in the summer, the incoming interns will be working on trying to connect with a couple labs and basically running a pilot. As you can see, in the middle slide, there's different requests that we have, like the ones that we identified to the most relevant. Like for example, I already said that just like UOT freezer set points, and then perhaps like brush ice blow up and like share cold storage space. And then we kind of built this pitch deck to inform the PIs that we'll be talking to and in communication with to understand like what do we need to be approved. So then hopefully next year it will be a full launch. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Are you gonna make a flyer, like a poster?
Oh.
Like, what I would love to see is like a beautiful poster with people's faces on it. It's like Matt Terrell wins the freezer challenge, the annual freezer challenge, and stick it up in Eckhart. But every faculty walking by has to go, Matt Terrell won this, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
put their faces up there, because it's great, it's so great to see it turn into like the actual people and the actual labs.
Yeah, typically in the past, when we've had the Shut the Sash competition, when we're giving them the donuts, we have like a picture with like them holding a box of donuts and the
But
winners.
what I mean is just like make a little flyer that is like, you know, the winners.
Yeah.
You know, 2024 spring, Shut the Sash competition, and get permission from each building to put it up in the lobby, you know, so everybody walking by has to see which faculty won. Like, that's what motivates them, I promise you. The next time you do that, everyone else will be like, and the heads of department are like, why is he the, you know, where are you on this flyer? Like, it really is the motivating factor for faculty, this competition, so,
Yeah, we should definitely do that. Yeah.
you know. I'm sure that there's gonna be some bulletin board that will allow you, or nice enough to put in. And send it to the physical science division, and, you know, they have a PR, they need other people. I'm telling you, it's like getting these four views on TikTok or something. They're completely motivated by like, my lab is better than.
They're also saving more money if they like win the competition and like saving more energy. So yeah.
It makes the dean happier about them,
Yeah.
it makes the department chair happy about them, it's soft status, you know, they need it for the workplace, like everything. It's awesome to see it turn into something real.
Other questions for them? All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
You know, you really want to start putting out a TV. Then you try it.
Something for the next group of students to aspire to. All right, so thank you all for coming. We really appreciate all the time that you've taken. Hopefully you enjoyed lunch and cupcakes if you didn't get one already. Make sure that you grab your Earth Day swag that we have here. And yeah, the students will hang out for a little bit if anybody has any questions for them. But other than that, happy Earth Week. Thank you.